All right, next thing up. As we all know, a lot of states and tribal commissions are not unified when it comes to the down fighter. All right, down fighter is, I feel, is probably the key to the problems. So in an effort to open up the discussion, and I want to open the discussion in a very professional and adult way, everybody, okay? I always look out for the best interest of the fighter. And with that said, it's a very hard pill for me to swallow right now to say that maybe we should change the rule to bring in the other commissions that are not present here today. With that said, I commend Jeff Mullen standing up and giving his reason why he likes the one-handed fighter down. I believe there's an issue with the clarification of a down fighter. I believe you can interpret it in different ways, and I read it as, if I'm going to be a down fighter, I'm going to drop a knee, or I'm going to lay on my ass, or I'm going to fall on my face. I'm not going to put my two hands down because I can't protect yourself. You also can't protect yourself with one hand down either. So with that said, we're going to open up the floor, and we're going to discuss this. Unfortunately, I'll tell you, I requested from Bob Bennett and Nick Limbo a text stating that if we changed, I get to speak first, I'm the president until tomorrow. If we changed, if they sent me a text and we decided, we all agreed, including the committee here that's very adamant against it, for the best interest of the fighter, we would change the down fighter. If everyone agrees, not just me, that they would accept it, and they'd accept the heel kicks to the kidneys, because we all know many people died because of heel kicks to the kidneys on the ground, all right? And I'm being facetious, all right, just so you guys know. But with that said, we're going to open up to the floor, and we're going to discuss it. They didn't send me a text. They didn't send me anything. No, Bob sent it to you. He did not send it to the president. He did not send it to the president. He sent it to you. So with that said, we're going to open it up. I want everyone communicating their feelings on that, not just the committee and not just Greg. I want to hear from Kentucky. I want to hear from Iowa. I want to hear from Illinois. I want to hear from Florida. I want to hear from California. Because at the end of the day, it's about fighter safety. And that's what we have to worry about. But with that said, everybody's got to be on board at the same time. And to me, I'm sorry, Jeff, the director of Nevada and the director of New Jersey aren't on board because they can't come here and explain to me why we should change that. That's my problem with it. So I'm done talking. So,
take it off the table.
What's that, the down fighter? No, we're opening up for discussion. Cowboy, come up here and take over this mic. We're not voting on it yet. We're discussing this situation.
Okay, so right now, there's already been some discussion about this. This is open discussion time, and as you guys know, in our parliamentary procedures, anybody can have the floor during open discussion times, but once there is a motion, it is limited to voting members. Before we have a motion, we do not have a motion at the present time, but would anybody like to discuss the down fighter rule? Yes, we will go to Mr. Schafer.
You know, while I stated earlier that the highest priority is to have a unified rule so the athletes compete under the same rules throughout the country, my concern is, let's say today the association decides to return to the previous format of the rule. What guarantee do we have that we're not in the same situation? When the rule got changed, a lot of executive officers expended a great deal of political capital, effort, and energy going to their government in order to get the rule changed. What guarantee is that they're going to be able to do the same to get the rule changed back, or that they'd even be motivated to do so after having changed that rule? Is it a question of, well, we're not unified now based on red and blue, just the positions of the red and blue will be changed? That's my concern, and I am the guy who said I would rather have what I would consider a less perfect rule that is unified. I'd just like someone to address that you know, even changing back as a concession to leaders that aren't here, how does that ensure us that we're going to be moving in a direction of having a unified rule?
I can tell you this, I'm not going to do nothing until I see some good faith from their side. Having said that, if they'll give us the 4, I'll give them the 1.
But I got Kim next.
That's what I mean, look, it's not perfect. I don't like it. I think John's rule's superior. It's not about what we in here, it's not about personalities, this is about the good of the fighter. If John Jones had lost his title 30 miles from where he would have kept it, that's stupid. It's not right, and we've got to respect and we've got to do what's right for the fighters. I don't think the one hand down rule is essentially less safe than 2 hands down, or like I like to say it, the knee down. I don't think we're going backwards as far as safety is concerned. But like I said at the beginning, to answer your question, Corey, I would have to see some movement on the. We came out here 42-1 in 2016. I expended political capital. I mean, John came to the meeting. We did all these things. We got the thing done. But then we have 45% of the country not using the rule set. That's not like 3 states, guys. That's 45% of the country. So the question is that you've all got to ask yourself when, and I'm not saying that we even take a vote on this right now, but if we do take a vote on this, we have got to think about what's best for these mixed martial arts fighters. Is it right for them to have one set of rules in New York and California, another set of rules in Nevada, and yet another set of rules in Texas and Illinois and all the rest of these places? Is that right? Does anybody think that that's okay? Because I don't think that's okay. But I've already changed rules once, and there's a lot of people that voted for it, and nothing happened. It seems like the general consensus, and this is me talking to Nick, is that pretty much the entire group will take the 4 and the scoring criteria if they get to keep the down fighter. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly the way I should put it, but that's essentially the grand bargain, so to speak. They're not here to speak, and I'm not speaking for Nick. I'm just telling you what the conversation I had with him at lunch. I know Greg's been having conversations, and I know that Jeff back there in Nevada, I mean, they've already adopted the 4 with the down fighter. Have you not, Jeff? So they've already got it. They've already got it. For a lot of us, it's fairly simple change. But I do think they're acting in good faith. I would just like to see some movement. And if we saw some movement for the good of the fighters, not for my ego and not for me and Mike and Sean. Look, I'm going to say it again. I think that knee down rule is superior rule. It's been sold terribly. That should have never been talked about with 2 hands. The media got a hold of that, and it was the most worstly sold rule change in the history of this sport. Having said that, we are where we're at. And I can assure you, am I lying, Mike? There's a lot of them guys, they ain't budging. They went as far as we can push them. This is the deal. And we have a responsibility to these fighters. A responsibility. It takes a long time to change rules. I've talked too long. You know my thoughts, but I'm willing to do 4 for 1 if I saw some movement on their side.
Mr. Sirb is acknowledged.
Thank you, Mr. Presidente or Mr. Legal Man. My job, with the help of Mike and Andy, was to talk to the other 16 commissions, many of who are not here. They're not here. And the question was simple to those other 16, the 42% that didn't do this. If you agree to all other of the rule changes that were made in 216, that we go back to the one hand down rule for uniformity's sake. uniformity's sake. I have emails from all 16. Now, granted, they're emails, but I have everybody on record. So my proposal with Nevada and Texas, we're going to go back to the one hand down rule. All 4 of the other rules are going to be adopted, and they have to be adopted by January 1. You got to give some time to a couple of these commissions to get it done. And I agree with Andy. These are guys that I'm not going to say I'm friends with everybody. I'm not saying you friends. I like everybody. But trying to get all these 16 people on one page was not easy. This was not easy. And I agree with Andy. We're taking all 4 of those rules for our one. And at the end of the day, we're going to be unified. And what I want to do is when we're done here, if we get this to the vote and we get it done, to have Mike and Dunn, who's going to be the next president, give to that press conference. We're going back to unified rules in MMA. That would sound beautiful. Fighters are going to love it. Referees are going to love it. It's not the best. And Andy was right. This is where we're at. But I got all 16 committing. I got all 16 committing to the other 4 rules. I'm asking the vote go back to the one hand down rule. I'll get all 16 to go the other way on the other 4. Thank you.
Mr. Sirb, would you allow me to ask you a question?
Sure.
A question from the Secretary. You've talked to 16 commissions about this that have not adopted the full unified rules, is that right?
16, yes.
And are they willing to start moving forward, adopting all of the other rules? What they're asking us to do, it sounds like, is change our rule back, and then they promise to adopt the rules that we passed in 2016. Are they willing to just start adopting those rules now and then come back next year on the assumption that they've adopted all those rules and then have us consider it? Because somebody has to take a leap of faith here. And they're asking this body to take the leap of faith that they're going to follow through with what they're saying. And I don't know why wouldn't we just turn that around and say, why don't you guys take the leap of faith and you guys make the change and then we'll look at it.
And I'm not going to argue with that. That's hard to argue with. I'm asking for the leap of faith. I'm asking for it. I'm asking for it because come January 1, if they don't and we end up back in that place, well then we're done. And we're never going to have unified rules. We're never going to have unified rules. But I'm asking for that leap of faith until January 1. That's what I'm asking. Give me that till January 1.
And Greg, I have to agree with Cowboy up there because I feel like we're being asked to concede on something that we all initially agreed on, except for one. We all initially agreed on it, and only 43%. Let me finish. We all initially agreed, and only 43% actually did it.
I know.
Okay? So now they're asking us to change back, and I'm all about unity, and I am going to do everything I possibly can to work towards unity. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not giving my position away in any case right now. I'm not saying I'm going either way. But you just said you're going to give them until January 1st to change, right? Yep. All those other 4 things that we've asked them to do. What if they don't? What if they don't?
Then we're on our own. We're back to square one. We're back here. We're back here.
Okay.
Wait.
No.
I think we should wait for them.
Okay. Mr. Foster is acknowledged. Mr. Foster recommended we wait for them. Did I characterize that correctly, Mr. Foster?
Come on, Andy. Come on, Andy.
What I'm saying is you can have a vote that is contingent upon them adopting the 4. If they adopted the 4, all of them, then we could begin our promulgation process back. And by this time next year, we're all unified because the promulgation process would have completed and our fighters have unification. But I understand you're wanting a leap of faith. We took a leap of faith in 2016 and we fell in the river.
I'll agree to that. I got enough faith that this can get done, and I'll agree to that and make that part of the motion. We go back to the one hand down rule, January 1, if all the 4 rules are done, then we're in unified rule. One hand down and all other 4.
Mr. English, John
Yeah.
English.
Blessed be the peacemakers. And no, He's reaching out. He's doing the right thing. He's trying to do the right thing. We need to keep into consideration here, we could be opening a Pandora's box. Because what happens in a few years when we have another disagreement? And a rule is passed, and people leave, and they won't come back unless they get to play by their rules. We need to move forward. A vote was taken, it was passed. It's not fair for the fighters, it's not fair for the officials. I don't like the fact we have zero evidence that this new rule has caused a fighter harm. We have nothing. We have to lean on our officials. The men up there are experts at what they do. The governors that have appointed you trust you in your expertise in what you do. We have to trust them. Neither any one of those men up there on that committee are sacrificing health and safety. And any assertion otherwise is reckless in my opinion. It's reckless.
Skip Brown would like to speak during the general discussion.
Yeah, you want me to talk, Andy? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Do I need to be recognized, Joe?
Oh, just, we got Skip first and then
Please,
Tracy.
Skip.
I can yield to it.
Thank you. So, Tracy from Bellator. Obviously, uniformity is something that is of paramount importance. These people on the Rules Committee have worked so hard. If there's anyone in this room that believes that they are not passionate and smart and have worked so hard for this particular rule, I don't think there's anyone who would disagree. But there's two paths to uniformity, as it would seem. There's either go with a compromise. Andy and I were just discussing, if that were the consensus of the group, there could be a contingency that everyone holds on going back to the old grounded fighter rule until the other group enacts and promulgates by January 1. It's like an escrow. Everybody holds off. And then if they do it, and that's the consensus of the group, then go back to the other rule. That's one route. The other route is to move forward with the rule that these folks have worked very, very hard on. But the only way, as I see it, is to look at the people who do not currently agree with the rule and to say to them and present this question: what evidence do you need to see in order to be convinced that this rule is a better rule? Articulate what that evidence is, and then let's go run that evidence down. Because otherwise, nobody's budging, period. Full stop. So it's that path or the latter path. And that would involve a lot more data gathering, but that would be the way that the rule, as it now exists, by the Rule Committee, goes forward. Our 2 cents.
Ms. Skip, did you?
Yeah, still, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Skip, that's okay. Skip Brown, DC Combat Sports Commission. There's two things, and some of this I think is undergirds this discussion. I'm just pondering it now. Some of the older guys here might be able to speak to it a little bit more articulately than I could. But I think this is not just about this rules change. When I first came into this association, there's always been a talk about a split. There's always been a talk about that. So I don't know if it's exclusively or primarily just about the rule. And I know it's an elephant in the room, or it might be changing a direction. But I think we need to peel to some of this back and really look at this and decide, you know, and have individuals really look and see what they really want to do. I think what you said, Andy, is great. And Greg, I think you moving in that direction is great too. And what you just said, Tracy, is great. But there's something that's been underneath some of this, and that's what needs to get to as well.
Further discussion before any motions are taken up. Is there Cristiano?
Just adding what Tricia said about the evidence, I don't think there will be a conclusion. I did this for a year from 2016 to 2017. Basically 3 questions. First, are the fighters getting more hit in the new rule? Second, are these strikes creating more damage to the fighters in this new rule? And the third thing is, which will be impossible to prove, are those strikes responsible for that injury specifically in that situation, or was that injury related to previous strikes that happened in the fight, in moments before or in the previous rounds? You won't come to a conclusion. And the study that I did, it's not documented, but I took a year watching fights, watching rounds, and the conclusion was that this rule didn't make the sport more dangerous. It didn't change. So, I mean, this evidence is here. And now they have 3 years. Andy has done 480 events from 2016 to today. He said earlier today, he hasn't seen one incident. So there's no more proof to show. It's clear to everyone. That's it.
I'd heard that the great state of Colorado, Tony, had wanted to speak. Was that true, or am I putting you on the spot, Tony? Is Tony in here?
We didn't have a unified rule set in Colorado for a long time. I looked for a year to adopt a unified rule set based on the current rule. I couldn't find any evidence that one or two-handed, quote unquote, made any difference. I don't think in Colorado, the welfare of the safety of the fighters comes first, and so does the development of the athletes. They should have the opportunity to go from state to state and compete under a unified rule set, right? I don't think it's our job to be bullied into adopting a rule set just because people aren't here. That's my personal opinion, right? If they choose not to be here, then they choose not to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Lee Parham from Texas. Somebody get him a microphone, please.
Joe, I'm going to speak up. I just wanted to highlight the fact that I was looking at the document that's on the ABC website for Unified Rules of MMA, and the rule is written, kneeing and or kicking the head of a grounded opponent. We're not talking about a rule change. We're talking about how that rule is enforced. I mean, everybody wants to talk about how hard it is to change rules. We're not changing a rule. We're changing the enforcement of the rule that all of us have the authority to do on our own.
Thank you. Lee, go ahead.
Okay, Lee from Texas. Thank you. We're here. We've been here. We didn't split off. We've been here every year, okay? We're usually in second place behind Andy's group with MMA fights, whether it be pro or amateur. So we have a fair number of fights in Texas. We haven't had any problems, despite what you saw up there earlier this morning. That was a foul. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick with what we've been going with, the one hand down, and related to the grounded fighter definition. And yes, it's a definition. It's an interpretation. But we, as everyone else, believe it or not, number one, fighter safety. We hear it over and over and over and over. I will say this. We will go forward with the other rules. I'm going to be working with our General Counsel's office, our Combative Sports Advisory Group, our executive. So I'm not saying that we're just going to shut everything down, okay? For the time being, we're going to go with the one hand down, continue to evaluate, okay? Not saying we're not going to do it. I can't give you a time frame because everybody in here knows how the rule process works. I can't say that we'll have something done by January 1. But we're not to be lumped in with anybody else, whether it be other commissions, other people that have a gripe, whatever. This is just how we're going to handle it, and I appreciate the work of the rules group and the work of the ABC board, and this is how we're going to handle it. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lee.
Hey, Lee, just clarification, you're going to go ahead and go with
That's what we're going to work for. All right.
I want to
Mr. McCarthy's recognized.
I want to make one thing clear. This has nothing to do with us, the Rules Committee, nothing at all. I do not care whether you like a rule or you don't like a rule, if you vote for the rule or you don't vote for the rule. One of the things I'm going to bring up to you right now is I got Mark Ratner sitting there from the UFC. I've got Corey Schafer with Tracy sitting here from Bellator. I work for Bellator. The one thing I do know, it is unfair to that promotion for them to have to go from state to state, change what rules they follow based upon you guys not getting along. It's so unfair to them, and it's even more unfair to the fighters. It's unfair to Bellator when you do that to them because you can't come up with something. I am telling you right now, I know the rule that we have works. It's been proven. If it took going back to one hand down, I'll be all for it if it'll bring all of you together. I'll be 100% for it. If that's what it takes, let's do it. But understand, I didn't bring up certain things when you were watching that video. I didn't do it because I didn't want to hurt someone that I care about. But when you talk about weight bearing, that referee saw those knees. He knew, but he said, no, you're not weight bearing. No, you're not weight bearing. So if you're going to do this, you've got to make it, that palm is down, that's it. There is nothing about bearing weight. There is nothing about anything with fingers. Your palm's down with one hand. That will make everybody happy. And if that's what it takes to get you all together, then damn it, do it. Because that's what the fighters deserve. It's what the fans who don't understand why it's different, it's what they deserve. I'm just telling you, you guys need to come together, and I hope you do that.
Anybody else like to be acknowledged? Who is it? Mr. Ratner. I apologize, I don't have my glasses on today, so I'm not seeing people the best who are waving their hands around, so stand up.
That's no problem. When we announce a fight, the first call I get is from either from ESPN in Connecticut, from one of their directors or one of their people there. And not to be crude, but they say, what's wrong with you guys? What in the F are you guys doing? Now you're going to tell me, is there replay in? Is the one-handed? It's amazing that they're mad. They're saying, you want to have this sport, how can you have different rules in different states? Now tomorrow night I'm meeting with, on rules, the NFL, NBA, MLB, and the Hockey League, and they laugh at us. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that we have different rules in different states. And I feel real bad as a former president of this place. Whatever the rule is, we just need to have it the same. It shouldn't be that hard. But to have different rules, I think I heard there were 6 or 7 different variations of these rules, which is even more crazy. So I feel real strongly, unified rules, whatever they might be, but let's get unified and go forward. Thanks.
And I don't usually do this. Actually, I'm going to recognize Pat English, and then I'd like to speak. I try not to speak too much when I'm doing this, but I'd like to say something as well. Mr.
I'm going to follow up on something Skip referred to and something that Mark referred to. Skip said something about the folks that have been around longer. I hope he didn't say older people. And Greg remembers this vividly. Before the unified rules, and I wanted to stay out of this discussion in the worst way, but before the rules, the unified rules of boxing, there wasn't a split in this organization. It wasn't as large an organization back then, but there were many different variations of the rules. Responsible people, Greg being among them, Mark being among them, Larry Hazard being among them, all the organizations being among them, meaning in this particular case for MMA, that would be Bellator and the UFC, in terms of the major ones. They realized that you can't, and I testified to this before Congress, and so did the late Dan Duva. You simply can't have a fighter, and MMA fighters are no different than boxers. You can't have a fighter have an expectation of rules in one state, and as Andy keeps saying, 30 miles away, you might have a different result based upon a different rule or a different interpretation. That you simply have to eliminate. Now, when the split here occurred, some of the folks who had been around a little longer, and I know I was one of them, I spoke to the, quote, other side. I don't condone, and everybody will tell you, I've said the same thing to them that I'm saying here. I condemn them for not being here. They should be here because of a personality issue, perhaps. They haven't been coming, but now you have an opportunity, perhaps, to try and bring yourselves back together. And because I, for one, care about the fighters, boxers, where I primarily do most of my stuff, but MMA fighters, try and hold out an olive branch. If they don't take the hand of peace, and then Andy's idea is a good one, but try, because you can't have 45% of the commissions not adhere to, quote, unified rules. They're not unified rules. Thank you.
Very quickly, I would just like to say just a couple things as a director in the state of Iowa. I'm going to tell just I'm going to make this story very quick, but I'm going to tell a story. We had a Bellator event in Iowa several years ago, and I was talking with a referee about the fact that I thought it was really cute that Iowa had, for the back of the head, we had followed the headphone rule for years. And I thought that was safer. I had a doctor who thought it was safer, and I thought it was really cute. We didn't follow all the unified rules. The overall impact did not hit me. One of the referees said, well, you're going to have a big problem because you got John McCarthy coming in to referee this, and you're going to explain that. And I sat there, I thought I was real smart, and I said, I can handle John McCarthy. And we sat down for a meeting at Hooters the night before the fight, and by the time I was done, I said, yes, sir, Mr. McCarthy, we're going to get this done right away and fix this. But what hit me, out of all the things that Big John said to me, yelling at me and being upset about it, is it's not fair. It's not right to the fighters, and that's what we're supposed to be here. I thought, looking back on it, it was stupid, that headphone, the whole thing about that was silly, but I thought I'm protecting the fighters by giving them a more protective rule, and in reality, all we are doing is confusing the rule sets for people. The only problem that we've had in the state of Iowa with down fighters is people getting confused about whether we're following the new rules or not. That's the only problem that we have had with it. I'll have a referee who wasn't updated and he'll explain it wrong, and then we got to try to clarify it, and then maybe something happens. But the idea that the headphone rule is safer, or that we are making it less safe and less fair for the fighters by not getting unified on this. When we have a 42-to-1 vote, we need to come together and decide that is the unified rule, and we all need to stick with it whether we like it or not. The last thing I would just close with is, at some point, we're the commissions, but at some point the market is going to have to start to take care of this. And I'm going to put some of this back on the promoters. The promoters are, if the NFL had one state that wouldn't follow the NFL's rules and passed a law, they would move that team out of there. And at some point, the promoters, the big promoters, are going to have to say, maybe we need to start slowly moving away from the states that will not follow the unified rules. And that might be the only thing at the end of the day that's going to solve this problem. Is there anyone else who would like to have some discussion on this? Yes, Mr. Dunn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Dunn. I'm on the database committee, the rules committee, and I'm very proud of the work we've done there. And I'm 100% convinced that our new rule is better than the old rule. But I feel so strongly that the rules need to be unified that I'm willing to take the leap of faith, get those states back, go back to the old rule, and just to get this done. The past 4 years have been a mess, and we can fix it today. The process of fixing it started today at least. And so I hope you guys will at least consider that when we take this to the vote. Okay? Thank you.
Further discussion, Sean Wheelock?
And I want to reiterate what my buddy McCarthy said and also what Mr. Ratner said. I think they made great points. First of all, is what John was saying. This isn't about us or ego or legacy or anything like that. It's about fighter safety. I get paid $0.00 to be a commissioner in Kansas, and I get the same pay to be chairman of Rules and Regs. Passionate about this sport. I'm passionate about fighter safety. As to what Mr. Ratner said, someone I've long admired, first regulator I ever met in this sport, he's absolutely right. It's a joke. It's embarrassing, but that's the way the ABC is set up. Like it or not, we're a confederation, and we're only as good as our members. I talked earlier about being naive on the 42-to-1 vote. I'm not going to have the same naivete. I would caution all of you. Actually, I'm a libertarian. I'm not cautioning anybody. I'm going to bring this to your attention. I naively thought that when it passed 42-to-1, the states that voted for it would actually enact it. And a lot of states, including a lot of states and commissions in this room, didn't enact it. So I feel personally it's extremely naive to think that we have pledges from these dissident states, many of whom haven't attended since Mike became president, many of whom haven't paid their measly $200 a year, that they're going to fall in line. Also, so disingenuous. Heel strikes to the kidneys were the worst thing. It's medically unsafe. It's unbelievable. Now it's fine and they're going to acquiesce. Completely disingenuous. If they think heel strikes to the kidneys are so unsafe, how is it now safe? They're going to acquiesce. So my feeling is there's a level of naivete that I thought at 42-to-1 that we would come together. So now the naivete switches the other way. We have pledges by text. No one's ever contacted me. Have they contacted you, Mike? Everyone's going to fall in line on that?
No,
Thank you.
Thank you. I did just receive something, and I commend Jeff Bennett. I commend Jeff Mulling sitting here and taking the heat. And I'll tell you, I did get something from Bob Bennett saying that he would accept all the other rules. But he also says a one-handed downed fighter is with weight bearing. Now I ask you something, Mr. McCarthy, as a, no, Mr. MacDonald, because I ask you too much shit. Mr. MacDonald, how can you tell when a fighter has weight on his damn hand or not? Can you? You can't.
What am I bearing weight? So he's exactly right. You can't, because if we took out a food scale or a postal scale or something like that and you rested one finger on it, it's going to register. If you start pushing down on it, it's going to register. Now, one of the things, whichever you decide to go with, hearing a bunch of different commissioners and being someone who travels to multiple different states and commissions to work different events, we're always hearing different things. Today, like we said earlier, there are so many different versions that some commissioners have in their head as to what this rule is. Yet the original rule was simply anything other than the soles of the feet. Now we hear terms like weight bearing. Now we hear terms like, well, the one hand rule, the one hand rule. There are, as far as I know, 2 states that have a one hand rule, but yet now we're all talking about potentially going back to that. Well, the vast majority of you never had a one hand rule. You had anything other than the soles of the feet. And then some folks say, well, no, we had the old rule, the 3 points of contact. That's not a thing. So as you move forward and you start to think about this, there are very few of us that really study this text and how things go. Because as referees, especially on the Rules Committee, everything that we put forward, we have to think, okay, in a real situation, can this be clear? Can this be concise? And is this easily enforceable? And once we start getting into things like, oh, you're playing the game. Like, how many of you have heard that term when it comes to, oh, if you're playing the game? Right. And in the referee world, it's a very common thing. But there's nothing about playing the game in the rule book.
And the rule became, well, if I feel that you're playing the game, then you're putting the call into my hands as to whether or not I'm going to call this strike. That doesn't end well. And we may have gotten away with it for quite a while, but at the end of the day, if you don't really understand exactly what these rules are and how they work and why they work, please talk to us. Talk to your fighters. Talk to the coaches, the people that really understand it, because those are the ones that it really impacts. And if we don't have crystal clear, then it's not going to work. Thank you.
All right. Hey, really quick, I want to hear from some other states, Kentucky, Virginia. I want to know what your assessments are on it, please. And then we're going to, I believe what we need to do is probably take a breather and move on to the agenda. We can readdress this tomorrow. I don't think right now we're just going to solve anything. I think we gotta take a break and discuss it. Yes.
Okay, so I'm Cindy from Kentucky, and I wasn't here in 2016 when this is voted on, and I don't even know if the inspector that was here brought it before our board for it to go before our state legislature to be adopted, because it does not match the Kentucky rules. I do agree with unified rules because it does make it simpler for the fighter to understand. And secondly, I'm one of the people on that list of 16. And when I agreed with Greg, I don't think I fully understood it. And it wasn't until yesterday when I had a conversation with Mr. Beltran, who took the time to kneel down beside my chair and explain it out, that I had a clear understanding. This 1- and 2-hand and weight bearing, why is that even part of the conversation? Because that's not it. So I'm all for us going with the unified rule and leaving it as it is without going back to this one-handed business, because it does ensure better fighter safety. And I think if everybody were in here, were asked that question, why are you here, and we all said fighter safety, then we would leave our egos at the door and we would ensure fighter safety. And I don't think that's happening. And I know I'm new to this, and no one, you know, I'm new. That doesn't mean that my opinion's not worthwhile. And our egos often get in the way of the things that we're really trying to accomplish for fighter safety. So that's all. Get a clearer understanding. That was what we needed to do. And I'll be taking this back to my board to present to our legislature to adopt it into Kentucky's rules, so that we can be a part of the unified system, so that we can have better promotions in our state and the fighters want to fight there. So.
Mr. Holland.
Yes, I'm like Texas. You know, I can everything except the one hand down situation. You've sent me surveys, and I've showed you guys that, you know, that is just one thing we can't change. And, you know, Virginia's ready to go with everything else, but we just can't change that one hand.
All right, we're gonna move on unless there's last call here for somebody who wants to speak. Yes, sir.
Hello, everybody. Gavin Pantoja from New Mexico. I'm a business owner, and so I sit here and I start thinking of different things, the way things are being perspective. Somebody has a different view. Somebody has this judge, that judge. Andy had a conversation with you. He says, we're going to give up these 4 for this 1. I felt we're giving up too much because I'm thinking like a business owner. I'm thinking like, I don't want to negotiate something that I think is for the better population of things. But then when I hear the experts come and speak, I am willing to take a step back for us to move forward. You're right. Somebody had mentioned that I was brought on board by the governor to do what's right for the community. We've got to make it unified. I'm going to take whatever advice these gentlemen back here have come to. They're the ones who are in the ring, whereas some of us are just the ones who oversee the rules. They're the ones who are in it. It's our job to see that, make sure safety is in hand. I like the unified rules. I love the idea with 2 hands down. But I'm going to have to go with however you guys feel to make this unified. Do I think that they're going to come forward, the ones who aren't here? Are they going to come forward? I don't like to be handcuffed with maybe they might come forward with something else when they're not going to guarantee to give us the 4, because they're not here to say they're going to give us the 4. Either way, I will support a unified version as long as we come together as one group. Fair enough?
Okay, I just want one thing for you guys to think about is all of these guys are experts in this sport, and this is unanimously a superior rule. And is regressing from what is the superior set of rules the right avenue we want to take to get to unity?
Is there anybody who has not spoken already who would like to make a final comment here? I think President Mazzulli's pushing to move on. Anybody who has not taken the microphone and spoken that wants to comment on this? Yes.
We're all part of this body, and we all have and should have an equal say in this. But if this is a vote that we have, the body has taken upon, you know, by the recommendation of the appointed Rules Committee, then we should all follow it, whatever it is. And we have to trust that they put the fighters' best interests in mind. We are all a part of this body, and we should all be unified whichever way it goes. I get that. But if 42 to 1 is the vote, why are we even having this discussion? Either you support it or you don't. And if you don't be a part of this body. That's simple.
Any other commission or individuals here who want to make a final comment?
My question is, like me and John talked about, how are you going to stop a fighter from putting his hand down and bringing it back up and he gets kneed? Now what's the referee do? What's the commission do? Exactly. Because we've had it happen so many times because they know they can get away with it. So all they do is reach down and put their fingers on the canvas in the cage, and boom, guy gets disqualified. He's losing the fight and he wins the fight. That's one thing that you have to get a solution for, because it's terrible.
Anyone who hasn't spoken? All right.
All right. One more. And then, as the last day of my presidency, we're going to table this until tomorrow.
Sorry, I know this is right at the end.
No, that's okay.
I was just curious if anyone has spoken to the fighters to get an idea of what the fighters think is.
I have to tell you, the committee has vested it with fighters. Actually, Matt Hughes was on the committee. Jeremy Horn was on the committee. Randy Couture. So we vested in Dunn. The future president tomorrow, in about 24 hours, was on the committee. So yeah, it was amazingly done.
So they've had a voice then?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, I stand up here and say I agree with everybody that, listen, if it's gonna be safer for the fighters and it's gonna be the same, and hey, listen, John McCarthy sucked a big pill down his throat saying that, and basically that if it's gonna be better for the fighter, let's do it. Now my biggest problem is if we do it, everyone better do it. And we have Cindy here from Kentucky who is new. And she sees our problems we're having right now, and it's not fair to her. It's not fair to her at all. It's not fair to the fighters. But I do commend Cowboy concerning the promotions. You could help out a little bit too. You're right. Absolutely. I think we're all in the industry together, and we all have to do the right thing for the fighters, including the promoters. So with that said, we're going to table it. And I'll try to fit it in sometime tomorrow before I leave at 2, and if not, Brian Dunn can take care of it. But we will readdress it before the end of the conference. And I'm only kidding, I'll be here. So.